Well, hello and welcome to Sansad TV. You're watching Viewpoint with me, Frank Rausen Pereira. Well, the gross GST collections rose 16.4% to over 2.01 lakh crore rupees in May. This comes after a record high goods and services tax collection in April, when the revenues touched all-time high of 2.37 lakh crore rupees. In May, the gross revenues from domestic transactions rose 13.7% to about 1.5 lakh crore rupees, while GST revenue from imports grew 25.2% to 51,266 crore rupees. Now, several of the large states have been doing wonderfully well, but the others, of course, the collections have not been up to the mark. In this edition of Viewpoint, we will analyze the latest GST numbers and what they mean for the economy and taxes. Joining me on the program today are Bipin Sapra, partner EY India, MS Money, partner Deloitte India, Ankit Goel, CA and tax expert, and he's also the founder partner at AAG and Co, and Vivek Ranjan, member tax policy CBIC. Thank you to all my guests for joining me on this edition of Viewpoint. Mr. Ranjan, let me start the program with you first. Let's first try and understand and analyze, and if you could put into perspective what these numbers really mean.
First of all, let me thank you for giving me this opportunity to be on your show. As you rightly said, that 2 lakh crore has been a milestone. But let me just go back a little bit in time. GST introduction was met with lot of expectation, hype and excitement. And it has lived up to its billing. Coming down to revenue, it's a number that people are waiting for every month. On first of month, that number comes and it has been impressive. And 2 lakh crore is another milestone, and that we have exceeded for the third time this month. So we crossed 2.1 lakh crore in April 24, that is last year. This year, April, we bettered that by a long way, and we achieved a figure of 2.37 lakh crore. And this month, again, we have been above 2 lakh crore. So, obviously, these numbers are good. They reflect the fact that economy is doing well. Last year, we grew at 6.5%. We have been one of the fastest growing major economy for quite some time, and that is reflected in those numbers. If you look at the breakup, you correctly said that imports are doing better than domestic supply GST. And I have analyzed that number, and it has happened in last 3 months more prominently, that is March, April and May of 25. And there are different reasons, but people are saying that it is also driven by the fact that there is a lot of uncertainties. Protectionist tendencies are rearing its head across the globe, and there are threats of duties being increased, imposed in many jurisdictions, and all that is also leading to some kind of stocking of raw materials, intermediates and finished goods by importers. So that's one reason. Apart from the fact that economy is doing well, we need all these raw materials to keep our industry going. So all those factors are responsible. So these numbers are obviously fantastic, and they obviously meet the requirement of revenue of the country.
Absolutely. So something to cheer about and something to be very happy about, really, as far as GST collections across the country are concerned. Ankit Goel, let me bring you to the picture now. Continuing in the same way, let's try and also understand and further analyze these numbers. What is the bigger picture that that comes out really, and what do these numbers really indicate?
So I believe the bigger picture is always the fact that any indirect tax numbers reflect the growth in the economy. They reflect the number of the inflation number that is prevalent in the economy. So if you look at our inflation number since 2017 and see the growth in that, or the inflation number there, it is about 5.5% average across these years. Similarly, the GDP growth will be about 6 to 7%. So when we combine these two numbers and kind of grow the revenue that GST started with, which was about 90,000 crore. So that number has, of course, increased with this multiple since 2017. And this growth is something that is, of course, making sure that our GDP growth is good, our economy is doing good. When Sir said that the import numbers have risen, import doesn't mean anything bad. Import numbers also mean that this import will be used by the economy, by the country to generate more jobs. When we see imports, we see iron ore imports, we see increase in raw material imports. So that is what is increasing in imports. So that in itself is a very, very important number or important facts, which will increase the idea that yes, we are generally having a good economic growth in this time where the world is closing down to a lot of things. We are in fact having a very resilient domestic economy, and at the same time, hopefully we will also be able to expand our services and goods export economy looking at these numbers.
I think that's a very valid and a wonderful point that you're making. You know, when the world is clamping up, going into a shell, really, India seems to be opening up and showing what a robust market we are and how well it is that we are doing. All right, Bipin Sapra, let me bring you into the picture now. Let's also try and understand, you know, Mr. Ranjan touched upon it in his opening remarks about what these numbers mean and why they are where they are today. But what seems to be working for us, and what are we doing right?
So I think we are doing most of the things right. As a proud Indian, I would say that our economy is doing what is required to be done to promote Make in India, to get whatever is needed to manufacture in India. I think we are doing all of that right. We are competitive vis-a-vis other markets in the economy. We are shifting manufacturing from other countries to India, and that's why you may see, given that Make in India has kicked off in a big way, some of that, the amount of imports which are coming in, there would be an increase in the import GST also, much higher than maybe the domestic GST. So the last month was, in any case, last couple of months have been interesting months where a lot of geopolitical issues and trade issues have come in. So, but what that means is that we have been producing right, and accordingly the economy is doing well, the growth numbers are well, both from a goods and a service perspective. I think we are doing what is right, and hence the GDP is growing.
Okay, points well taken. Let me take the points that you're making forward as well. You know, let me bring in Nemis Money into the picture. Really, as far as the GST mop-up, the GST numbers and the figures are concerned, clearly on the rise, but there's still a long way to go, a lot more to be done. Where do you see it headed?
One point that we should be rightfully proud of is the fact that GST as a new tax system now has stabilized. So and we have to bear in mind that this was a combination of some 30 odd state taxes, a lot of central taxes, the states and center getting together. So the fiscal experiment that GST started in 2017 was unique. And I don't think an experiment of this scale has been attempted anywhere in the world. The fact that in just a short period of 8 years, the whole system is stabilizing, the collections have been stable, they are now increasing month on month, year on year, is itself a matter of celebration. But while this is a matter of celebration, we should be very cognizant of what are the trends that we are seeing from the GST collections and which are the areas that we need possibly to focus for the future. We should not be getting into a situation where we are so happy with the collections that we forget that the good collections give us a lot of elbow room now for the next stage of GST reform. And GST is today in need of a large scale reform so that it achieves its potential. One area is the fact that unlike many other countries which have a GST system or a VAT system, as it is called in some parts of the world, there are far fewer rates than we have in India. We have several rates in India. So we have a 3% for gold, a 5% for essential goods, a 12% for certain categories of goods which are between 5 and 18, and 18% which is the normal rate for most of the products, then a 28% rate for certain products like automobiles and cement, and then a compensation cess on top of it. So the rate structure that we have on GST again is unique to India, because so many rates typically lead to a large amount of complexity. And one of the aspects that we need to focus on is now rate rationalization. This seems to be the right timing in times of rate rationalization, primarily because all the earlier discussions when they have happened on rate rationalization over the last 2 years have led to a worry that if we move products across rate categories, some will obviously need to move to the lower category as well. Will that lead to a revenue loss? Will that revenue loss impact our development projects? So that worry is possibly today a little behind us, and there will be enough confidence among all the policymakers today to say that look, GST is today a stable tax, and therefore if we are moving to the next phase of GST reform, we can call it GST 2.0, 3.0, whatever is the flavor of the day. But the GST 2.0 in terms of timing is now ready to be launched.
Right.
Just one more point at this stage is the fact that in GST, even today, in addition to the rate rationalization, there is a dire need to simplify the input tax credit rules.
Right.
And many businesses, whether they are large or whether they are small, mostly the MSMEs and the SMEs typically have a lot of struggle in getting the right amount of input tax credit. And input tax credit at some level, whether it is a manufacturer or a trader, needs to be treated as a vested right. If I'm buying goods and selling goods, or if I'm buying raw material and manufacturing, whatever input tax credit I'm entitled to has to become a vested right. There is no question of allowing some, disallowing some, sometimes allowing some, sometimes disallowing, some. So that is one more area of reform that businesses would be very happy if we do in GST 2.0.
Okay. We've reached a stable state really as far as GST as a tax reform is concerned. It's now time to bring in a few more reforms is what MS Money is suggesting. So Mr. Rajan, how would you respond to that? Do you think the time is right? Should we see more GST rationalization?
Let me just take you back to when GST was launched, how rates were fixed. So basically we found out what was the central excise duty that was leviable, what was the VAT or average VAT that was leviable on a particular product or item. Now what we did was that for each commodity, going into granular details, we found out what was the tax leviable and then we fixed the rate accordingly. So that was one of the reasons which actually was responsible for inflation not taking over as GST was introduced. In many countries, GST introduction was accompanied by rise in price levels. Malaysia is an example where it led to actually withdrawal of GST in 3 years' time. So that was, first of all, GST per se did not raise duty on any commodity or item. Part 1. In November of 2017, within months of GST introduction, the highest rate was 28%, which presently is. And out of that list, 178 were moved from 28 to 18%, some were also moved to lower rates. Only 50 remained at that point in time. Some more items have been taken out since then from 28% list. So yes, I would agree with Mr. Mani that there is a need for rate rationalization. GST Council has constituted a group of ministers, GOM, on rate rationalization precisely for this purpose, and that GOM is going into these issues, and they will certainly look at what would be the objective. Objective would be, for example, there are lots of disputes because there are different rates applicable to different types or similar types of items. So one objective would be how to reduce disputes or areas for disputes, part 1. Another is how to take care of common man. Can we do something so as to reduce burden of taxes on common man? So these are broad principles, I presume, which would GOM would be guided. GOM is to meet and take a view on this.
Absolutely. All right. So it's evolving. The process is, continuously changing as well, and we'll see it fructifying and reaching its ultimate goal sooner rather than later. All right. Ankit Goel, let me come back to you now. Let's hear your thoughts as well, really, as far as what kind of GST rationalization would you like to see?
No, I believe that this unique system in India, that we have multiple rates of GST, is something that is a need of our country. We would want to tax those goods which are mostly consumed by all our people at 5%, so that we don't implicate or force some tax outgo from the very poor in our country. And at the same time, those things that are taxed at 28%, we understand as a country that we are taxing them at 28% because we know that they are mostly being consumed by those people who can pay that 28% tax. So mostly many developed countries will only have a direct tax system, or they will have a flat indirect tax system which will tax everyone. But because our economy is different, we are a developing nation, we have some inequality within our people with respect to their economic well-being. We need to have this differential tax rates. But yes, minimization is the key. I believe sir has already shared how the MOM they will constitute the idea that this 12% rate can be, how can we change it? How can we just vanish the 12% rate? Some goods might go to 5, some goods might go to 18. And in the long run, I believe what sir has said is also very important, that if the ministers can, of course, try and find out some way of eliminating some items from the 5% tax bracket or 12% tax bracket that are still having an implication on the poor. That is something that will be the best possible rationalization for GST. With respect to input credit, simplification is always the best idea. And at the same time, I always remember my time at the first anniversary of GST, where I was fortunate to attend that grant program which was arranged by the central government. And there I listened to this one thing that was very, very important. That was simply the idea that if there are 10 shopkeepers, out of those 10, in case one is doing some cheating, then you catch that one before everyone else starts doing the same thing, because it's a competitive environment. If one person starts cheating, others have to cheat to survive in business. So the idea is to stop that one person from cheating, so that the economy generally feels that yes, we have to pay these taxes, there is no way around it.
Absolutely. All right. Since we are here, then Vipin Sapra, let's talk about another aspect as well. You know, every time we talk about GST, this particular issue comes up as well. Do we also need to widen the net really as far as GST is concerned? And when I say that, I mean, you know, bring in other segments like petroleum and, others which are outside the ambit of the GST within the ambit of the GST. Is that something that can be done at this point in time?
So I think this is absolutely the opportune time. The revenues are growing, the rate rationalization is being talked about, and I was just listening to the conversation, and I just wanted to chip in and say that I think rate rationalization, which we have talked about, there will be two parts to it. One is the 5, 12, 18, 28, the actual rates which are there, which would be looked into and which are being looked into. But more importantly, there are individual items within the same rates where there are huge number of classification disputes, which the current GOM is looking into, and the industry is looking to that those should get streamlined, that similar items which are being classified today in different rates, there is a lot of litigation that needs to be ironed out. Actually, litigation is going to be a mantra going forward when GST 2.0 is being designed. And you would have heard in the media that there is a lot of discussion on taking GST to the next level, which is GST 2.0, and rate rationalization will be one part of it, so that the disputes get reduced. Whatever is happening in audits and other things, they get streamlined, and also the credit which Mani spoke about, that there is a credit rationalization. But coming back to your question on increasing the base, you know, today, even with such high rates and such diverse rates, our tax to GDP ratio is somewhere between 10 to 12%, which is quite low. The tax to GDP ratio in most of the mature economies is much higher. So what we are not doing right is, one, there are a lot of exemptions. A lot of products which should be in there are not part of the GST network. And also the credit chains are breaking. So there is a lot of leakage which is happening because of that. So petroleum, diesel, ATF, gas, all of these need to be brought in as soon as possible. And I thought it was when this discussion was happening in the 54th and 55th GST Council, and there was a talk of ATF and being brought in, and there was a categorical statement that the states had not agreed to at least discuss bringing of ATF, which is the lowest hanging fruit, given that it's only going to be used by the airlines and others. So fuel is one part of it. Real estate, we have to broaden it. There is no doubt about it. Electricity, power, those are things, a lot of credit is getting stopped there, and we are being uncompetitive, the products are being uncompetitive. So I think this is the right time to bring in the new products, which are the products which are outside, reduce the exemptions and increase the base.
Sure, points well taken. All right, let's take a step back and let's look at the GST numbers once again, MS Money, and discuss and try and understand and put into perspective really what does this mean for the economy as a whole, and what does it mean for taxes going forward?
See, for the economy, what it means is that we now have enough fiscal headroom to carry out a few experiments, and the experiments could be in respect of expanding the GST portfolio, removing classification disputes, for instance, because we have too many products classified into too many buckets, today. Streamlining input tax credit, as I said earlier, by making it simpler and making it easier for everyone to avail. So for the economy as a whole, one, it provides significant fiscal headroom for us to carry out some small experiments in terms of GST and to see where that leads to. The second is that GST is now a tax of the future. And while GST is an indirect tax and therefore has got an inherent element of being a little regressive, because a tax on a product affects poor people and rich people identically. And to an earlier point, which one of the earlier speakers said, that the objective of having multiple rates was to ensure that the taxes applied on products consumed by lesser privileged sections of society are taxed at a lower rate. Yes, that is the objective, but somewhere there have been some aberrations. For instance, a product like cement, which is used by everybody for construction, continues to be taxed at 28%. Now, cement is key to the country's infrastructure development, and there is no point in taxing cement at 28, more so when the products associated with cement, such as all the steel items, the building construction material, the doors and windows, everything else is at 80. Like these, there are many aberrations. So one aspect from a national perspective is to make GST simpler, to say that you don't need to go to a tax expert to find out what is the rate of GST applicable to my particular product.
Right.
As a business, as a citizen, if I am MSME, SME, anyone, I can open the schedule. I don't have to read long sentences comprising of 65 words in one sentence and say in this word means this or that word means this. I can get it. So this is simplification one. The second aspect that this gives us a chance as a country is in terms of ease of doing business. We have come to a certain level, and over the last 2 years, we have plateaued at that level.
Sure.
Now, GST simplification is one of the ingredients in demonstrating to the external community, including the FIIs of the world, including the overseas investors, that look, India is ready for business. So this is, I would say, a national imperative now when we get into GST 2.0.
Absolutely. Okay, points very well taken. At this juncture, I'd like to thank the guests who have joined us remotely, that is Bipin Sapra and MS Money as well, for being with us on the program and sharing your views and perspectives with us. I'm going to continue the discussion here in the studio for the next 2 or 3 minutes. Mr. Ranjan, let me put across, the points that were made by the other speakers and try to take that particular aspect forward with you. Yes, we want a simpler GST. Yes, we want a more streamlined GST. But it's not as simple as saying that we want it and let's have it, isn't it? Because there is so much that goes into doing what it is that we are doing at the end of the day.
Let me just put the issue in perspective first of all. There have been 55 GST Council meetings so far, and every council meetings, initial ones, we can leave them aside. last 2-3 years, the focus has been to take care of pain points of industry, which includes rates, as he said, classification disputes arising out of differential rates and stuff like that, and also procedural aspect, also systems related aspect. So last 2-3 years focus has been as to how to take this process of simplification of not only policy, not only rates, not only procedure, but IT systems forward. So that is what it is, and more than I think about 30 odd meetings, I presume, would have focused basically on simplification and removing the pain points for the industry. And that process, I mean, tax reforms, as they say, is an ongoing process, and that process is going on. Rate rationalization is a part of that process. That initiative has been taken by the GST Council, and we'll see some results there once they deliberate and present their findings to the council, and council will take a decision thereon. But yes, we are guided by those mantras that tax must be simpler, and in terms of rates, in terms of policy, and in terms of persons who are actually dealing with the tax rules and procedure, they can understand and implement it easily.
Absolutely. And Ankit Goel, close the show for us with your concluding remarks on what next, where do we go from here, and what's the best way forward?
No, I strongly believe that tax is a derivative of the size of the economy. And to improve the size of the economy, one of the most important things that we have to do is ease of doing business, how we can enhance that. I won't disagree with sir that GST has become simpler with respect to compliance, with respect to assessments, with respect to how simple is it to kind of take it, to just complete the compliances. If somebody wants to do an honest job, they can do it in no time. Input credit has been streamlined. RCM related issues have been streamlined. We see a lot of changes in the actual compliance which make things simpler for the day-to-day businessman. But at the same time, there's no end to ease of doing business. If the economy expands, the taxes expand, and that is what we are seeing here.
All right, gentlemen, we'll have to leave it at that. Thank you so much for joining me on the program and sharing your views and putting things into perspective for us. What's coming out of this discussion is that there have been several GST meetings held over the years, and we have clearly achieved what we want to achieve with regards to GST, and the work is still in progress. It's only going to take some more time to ensure that we get the kind of GST regime that we really want and we hope for, with far more simplification. But all that is going to take time. But the agenda is very, very clear. The focus is on removing any kind of stumbling blocks and ensuring that the pain points are addressed with every passing meeting. With that, it's a wrap on this edition of Viewpoint. This is Frank Rausen Pereira signing off.